to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest from Chava, ESPN, who says, they tell me that things are progressing well for a possible fight between Juan Francisco Estrada and Jesse Bam Rodriguez in June or July. Eddie Hearn told us that he would look for it to go down in the summer in Phoenix, Arizona, which is Bam Rodriguez's neck of the woods. No mention of the tune-up fight Gallo said he was supposed to be having very soon. This is a major fight for Juan Francisco Estrada. This is a major fight, perhaps even a crossover fight for young Bam Rodriguez, the two-division champion who beat unbeaten Sonny Edwards down there at flyweight in his last fight. Now he's returning to super flyweight. Few passing thoughts. My previous video, we talked about the possibility of Gallo facing Bam, but we also talked about the possibility of Gallo facing Kazuto Ioka. Kazuto, who petitioned the WBA for an exemption to the mandatory so he can go unify titles with Gallo. If Gallo is all tied up with talks for a Bam Rodriguez fight, he's not available for a Kazuto Ioka unification match, which would leave Kazuto with only one other champion to pursue, Argentina's own IBF champion, Fernando Martinez. He can try to convince the WBA to stand down so he can go unify with that guy, but that fight with that fighter, it's not as big as a Gallo Estrada fight. Gallo is an established name at this weight, one of the bigger names at this weight, whereas Fernando, God bless him, he's a good fighter, but he's not well known. And that's if the WBA even gives Kazuto that exemption. They might not, and if they don't, he's on the hook and he has to satisfy his mandatory. Golden Boy Promotions' own Scrappy Ramirez. Just some things to think about. This news doesn't just affect Bam, it also affects Kazuto. So back to Bam and Gallo. I favor Bam Rodriguez in this fight. I favor Bam whether Gallo has a tune-up or doesn't have a tune-up in the next few weeks. I favor Bam. Even though Gallo has more experience is on his side. I think power, too. I think punch for punch, he might be a bigger puncher than Bam. He might be, or in terms of power, they might be about even, but I don't think power in and of itself is what will decide this contest. I think it's mobility, agility, angles, and that's what Bam has that Juan doesn't have. A fresher set of legs. A fresher set of reflexes. Juan Francisco Estrada has not seen action since the third installment of his saga with Chocolatito. That was well over a year ago. He did mention scheduling a tune-up fight very soon, en route to a Bam Rodriguez fight. I'm going to assume he's still doing that. If the fight with Bam is supposed to go down in, say, late June or early July, that gives him enough time between then and now to squeeze in an easy one, a little maintenance fight in between. Nothing major and nothing dangerous, nothing that would jeopardize the Bam Rodriguez fight. It would be less than ideal to go straight into that fight under these circumstances. He hasn't fought in over a year and he's getting up there in age. He needs a maintenance fight. For it to be everything I want it to be, I would like for Juan to have that tune-up fight. I don't want him to have to try to shake off ring rust and cobwebs in that thing. I don't like his chances either way, but I would prefer that he be fully prepared. I think it's the movement and the angles that are going to get to him. I think it's the freshness and the snap in Bam's punches. The speed. I definitely think he's got speed on Juan Francisco Estrada at this stage in Juan's career, that Bam is faster, sharper. I like Bam to win the fight. Every time that Bam Rodriguez has been required to step up, he has, from the Quadras fight to the Rungvisai fight to the Sonny Edwards fight. A few lackluster showings in between. When it's time to perform on the big stage, Bam shows up. When it's all on the line, Bam shows up. This is the kind of fight that Bam Rodriguez gets out of bed for. First impressions. I like Bam to win. Let's see if Eddie Hearn can get this one over the line. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Teofimo Lopez Sr. said, I don't think Crawford wants anything to do with my son. His career is going to be over. That's how he feels. My son destroying him. Crawford, thinks he's King Kong. Him losing to my son would be a disgrace. He wouldn't be able to sleep at night. It would be a nightmare. Do you think they really want this fight? No. I think what they're doing is barking from behind the fence. Barking from behind the fence safely because they figure that Crawford won't go back into business with Top Rank. He left them rather unamicably, and a lawsuit followed. A lawsuit that didn't go anywhere, but a lawsuit still. Crawford didn't leave Top Rank on good terms. They know that?
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So they figure if they call him out, the fight likely won't happen, but they'll still keep their names out there and have articles written about them based on what they've already done at 135, at 140. Some people will buy into it. Some people will believe it. And some won't. But it's all about press. It's all about keeping their names out there. They don't actually expect that fight to materialize, and they don't actually expect to get him in the ring. That's just what I think. That's what I think. Perhaps you feel differently. Though irrespective of what you feel and what I feel, if they are serious about doing this fight, they have to get Bob. Bob has Crawford's number. Call him. The people in boxing, the fighters, have a way of playing the fans against each other. Sometimes it's to make a fight, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just about the press. And that could be what's going on here. But irrespective of what you think and what I think, if they're serious, then Top Rank has to make the call, and Top Rank has to make the offer. Why them? Why Top Rank? Because Teofimo's not a free agent. It's not like he can go to another platform. He's contracted to Top Rank. We don't know the full extent of Crawford's situation. We don't know that his arrangement with the PBC isn't limited to an Errol Spence Jr. fight or Errol Spence Jr. fights. But now that he's not going to be fighting him again, he might be a free agent. Let's just say that he is. If he is, he ain't got no money to offer Teofimo Lopez or no platform to do that fight, though. Even if he did, I reiterate, Teofimo's under contract with Top Rank. So the only way the fight happens is if Top Rank pays for it and they do it on ESPN. Thus, if Teofimo is serious, and his father, and his team, and they really want to do this thing, they're the ones that have to make the offer. Top Rank has to pay for it. Otherwise, it don't go down. And it don't go down based on how many interviews you do or how many sound bites you put out there, how many insults you hurl at Terence Crawford. By now, enough people understand that if you really want to make this fight, you have to make an offer. You have to do it now. Currently, there seem to be rumors and rumblings about a potential Crawford versus Tim Tszyu fight should Tim Tszyu take care of business with Keith Thurman. A Crawford versus Tszyu fight would presumably take place at 154 for Tim Tszyu's WBO title. For him to get there, he has to beat Keith Thurman next month, which would put a Crawford fight several months out. Thus, now is the time for Lopez and his team to make the offer to Crawford, because he hasn't signed on to fight Tim Tszyu yet. They have to wait out the outcome of Tszyu versus Thurman. This is if they're serious. Like I said, I don't think they are. Some people don't think of the Lopezes as anglers, but that's very much what they are. The angle with Vasyl Lomachenko is that Teofimo was bigger and younger. The angle with Josh Taylor is that he arguably lost to Jack Catterall the fight before, and there was a year in between those fights, between the Catterall fight and the Lopez fight. Where Josh Taylor looked like shit with Jack Catterall, Terence Crawford looked like a demigod against Errol Spence Jr. So the circumstances, they are different, as are the fighters' base styles. Josh Taylor, for as big as he is, he's a mid-range to inside guy that comes forward, whereas Terence Crawford, he can hang back. That's Teofimo's weakness. A fighter who can move around and hang back to force Teofimo to come to them. When Teofimo Lopez has to give chase, he leaves himself open for a lot of shots because he doesn't know how to diversify his offense when he's coming forward. Whereas Crawford, who's taller and longer and stronger, he can pick apart Lopez from the outside, sharpshoot him all night, stop him. I happen to think the Tim Tszyu fight is a more dangerous fight for Terence than the Teofimo Lopez fight. It's all relative, because I think he beats them both. But what makes a Tim Tszyu fight a bit more dangerous than a Lopez fight is that Tim is the bigger, younger fighter. Where Teofimo Lopez is kind of shitty on the front foot, Tim Tszyu, he's at his best on the front foot, stepping into his jab and bringing other punches over, putting pressure on the other man. That's what he does. That's what he's good at. That's what Teofimo is not good at. Coming forward. You already saw that in the George Kambosos fight, the Sandor Martin fight, more recently in the Jermaine Ortiz fight. So what do you think happens if you put him in there with Crawford? Crawford knocks him out. He ain't got no ring coverage. He's a short, stumpy fighter who has to close the distance before he can do anything. He doesn't have as much ring coverage as Tim Tszyu, doesn't take up as much space, not as tall, not as long. It'd be easy for Terence Crawford to walk Teofimo into punches. Many times have you seen this kid get out hustled killed when he has to give chase. That's his kryptonite. That's his weakness. An outside fighter who can move. But Terrence is no ordinary outside fighter.
It's not just an outside fighter.
Damn good on the inside, too, if he wants to fight on the inside. There's no area of the ring. There's nothing Teofimo Lopez does better than Terrence Crawford at any range.
It's an easy fight for Terrence Crawford, which is why I question whether or not these guys are serious about fighting him, because if they are, you need to make him an offer, and you need to do it now.
Thurman versus Tszyu is right around the corner.
If Tszyu wins, he may move right into negotiations for a Crawford fight. So if you really want to fight him, you need to strike while the iron is hot and beat Tim to the punch. That's if you really want to fight him.
I don't think they do. Like I said, I just get the impression they're barking from behind the fence because they don't expect Crawford to go back into business with Top Rank and vice versa. They don't actually expect the fight to happen, so they can say whatever they want. Play the fans against each other. Try to get people to buy into it.
This is not a featherweight who moved up in weight like Vasyl Lomachenko, and this is not a guy who arguably lost his last fight and sat out for a year. This is not an injury-prone Josh Taylor.
Doing a bunch of interviews with guys that are sucking up to you for access, groveling. That might fool them, but it doesn't fool me. If you want Crawford, you have to make an offer. It's very simple. A lot more simple than people realize.
What's the bigger fight, Crawford versus Lopez or Crawford versus Tszyu?
Well, I do think Crawford versus Lopez is a commercially viable fight. I think you could sell a couple of pay-per-views with that thing. I do. Maybe in the neighborhood of 300,000 to 400,000 pay-per-views. I could see that.
But Lopez has never actually been on pay-per-view, and he doesn't have a country behind him like Tim Tszyu.
He doesn't bring in that international arm of revenue. Remember that we're having this conversation on the premise that Tim Tszyu beats Keith Thurman, possibly knocks him out, and whatever that does for his profile in America.
Because he's already a star in his own country, he wants to become a star here.
See if he can. Maybe a Tszyu fight is a little bigger because it brings in international revenue, though I could go for either fight. As stated, though, I don't believe Team Lopez. I don't think they really want this thing. Upstairs in super middleweight news, just another look at what is an ongoing story that is still fluid, that Al Haymon's PBC are reportedly ready to pay Canelo Alvarez's guaranteed purse, said to be around $35 million, for a fight versus Jaime Munguia on May 4th. But not if he insists on fighting Jermall Charlo. It's claimed PBC believe a fight versus Munguia would sell better.
That bit of it I agree with, but the whole thing is just so dysfunctional.
Like the PBC's fans, these individuals that frequent social media hiding behind Google stock images, hurling personal insults at anyone that points out how dysfunctional and how haphazard the PBC as a company is run, with widespread rumors that Al Haymon has not been seen or heard from since late last year.
Who's driving the car over there?
Whispers and rumors that Al Haymon is missing in action, and it's actually Luis de Cubas Jr., Tom Brown, that are trying to hold things together, running the show over there, driving the car.
Straight into a wall.
To say that it is less than ideal for them to be going through this with the biggest name on that side of the street that they're supposed to have for at least 2 more fights at this very critical point in the juncture only accents just how dysfunctional and haphazard this brand is run, this outfit.
At a time when everybody else is rolling out their comprehensive schedule of fights. Boxer, Queensbury, Top Rank, Golden Boy.
Matchroom. Earlier today, Matchroom officially announced the price point for the upcoming Joshua versus Ngannou fight.
$40.
If you round up, it's only about $40. For the Brits, across the pond in the UK, it's about 19 pounds. Here in America, it's about $40, which is more than what the Brits are paying, but still less than what we normally pay for a pay-per-view for a box office fight.
That's value for money.
Think about that, and then I think about this, what the PBC is currently going through with Canelo Alvarez, the biggest name in the American market, and that he may not fight there, that things might not work out. The one fight they do have on schedule, Tszyu versus Thurman, how are they supposed to compete?
How are they supposed to keep up with everybody else?
You're at an impasse with Canelo Alvarez over who he's going to be fighting and whether or not you want to pay for it, and the only fight you have on schedule is Tszyu versus Thurman. Tim Tszyu, who I'm a big fan of, but is still a newbie to this market and shouldn't be behind a paywall.
Least of all against a quasi-retired fighter. Is this how you're going to compete with Matchroom with Top Rank?
And what if Canelo Alvarez leaves? What does that do to the May schedule? We already know they didn't do any fights in January, none in February. They're only doing one in March. Rumor has it they're not doing any cards in April.
Don't shoot the messenger. That's just what I heard.
But was originally thought that they would get Canelo Alvarez out there in May, but now they're going through these problems.
What if he leaves? What if he doesn't fight?
Under their banner, what does that do to their May schedule? If the rumors are true, and they don't do a show in April, but Canelo Alvarez leaves them high and dry in May, doesn't that mean they will have only done one card 5 months into this year?
And what's the price point?
They haven't officially announced the price point for the Tszyu versus Thurman show, but I'm going to assume that it's more expensive than the Joshua versus Ngannou show, than the price point for that show.
Which is stupid.
On the Joshua versus Ngannou show, that card, you have several fighters that are on the up and up, that have traction in their careers and momentum. Joseph Parker coming off that dominant win over Deontay Wilder. Zhilei Zhang, the 2 knockouts he just racked up over Joe Joyce. Anthony Joshua, his dominant performance over Otto Wallin, who some people thought was going to beat him. Francis Ngannou, a very big name in mixed martial arts, making his bones in the world of pro boxing, having come off of arguably beating Tyson Fury. How is the PBC supposed to compete with that?
Tszyu versus Thurman.
Because they may not have Canelo Alvarez much longer. Blame Canelo, you don't blame Canelo. Whatever you think about Canelo, it's besides the point because it's not good for them.
It's not.
It's not good for the PBC.
He's their ace in the hole. They need him.
How the hell are they supposed to be able to keep up with everybody else if they don't have him? So many willfully go up to bat for Al Heyman and what is supposed to be his business prowess while the PBC seemingly falls apart. Only a testament to how obtuse and childish some individuals can be.
But either way, it's all bad.